Welcome to Sustainability Now, an exploration of technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. Designed for socially conscious entrepreneurs and individuals interested in responsible stewardship of the planet. Sustainability Now covers food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome, everybody, to Sustainability Now, technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. I'm your host, Mira Rubin, and today I am very excited to introduce to you Christa Barfield. Lifelong resident of Philadelphia, Christa is a healthcare professional turned urban farmer and entrepreneur. After leaving a management position in healthcare administration, she had an epiphany in 2018 that led her to create LifeLeaf Organic Farms, which is the parent company to Viva Leaf Tea Co and FarmerJawn Agriculture, which is a Philly-based community greenhouse and CSA. Christa's focus lies in the intersection of education, environmental science, and food justice, with an ultimate goal of eradicating local food deserts, communities where there is little access to fresh, nutritious, and affordable food. Christa, I'm so excited to have you here, not only because of what you're doing, but because you're literally right in my backyard.
Yes.
It's so cool to be around the corner from somebody who is innovating in farming right in my neighborhood. It's remarkable. So tell us, there's so many questions I have for you. But the first thing I want to ask is, where does the name FarmerJawn come from?
Yes. And first, I just want to say thank you so much, Mira, for having me. I'm very excited to chat with you today. And FarmerJawn is the word has a lot of symbolism and meaning. And Jawn is a Philly word itself and has been for decades. And, Jawn means person, place, or thing. It's a noun. It means pretty much anything can be a Jawn, a place, all the things. So the way that we use it here in Philadelphia, I thought I wanted to send a message that farming should be accessible. Farming meaning connecting food and farming back together, because that's the origins of our food, and the textiles and everything literally comes from agriculture. So FarmerJawn means that anyone can farm. And it just makes it more of a, accessible and relatable, right, to urban people from urban communities. And that's what we want farming to be.
That's awesome. I love reconceptualizing farming to be something that is integrated into any community, including urban communities. That's phenomenal.
Yes. So important. Thank you.
Yes. So you had an epiphany in 2018. You had this career, you got burnt out, you said enough of this, and then you went on your pilgrimage that you didn't even know was going to be a pilgrimage. So why don't you share a little bit about that so people know where you're coming from?
Yes, absolutely. So, I lived in Philadelphia my entire life. I worked in healthcare, spent a lot of time, working my way up in the ranks in different practices throughout the city, hospitals, so forth, and had a job where my practice was made up of 23 physicians. It was a multi-site practice. I helped with the administration at the Center City location, which is one of the busiest, and also had staff of my own by the time I worked my way up in that company. And, being responsible for others and differing in ideals around management, all of that led to my burnout. And I needed a change, and I didn't know what that was going to be. But on January 2nd of 2018, I walked into work like I would any other day, but, energized because it's the new year, first day back in 2018. And I read an email and that I was snarky, and I immediately was like, you have to, Christa, no, no more. Like this, today is the day. This is your last day. You're going to put, well, not my last day, but at least I made the decision that something else was coming in my future. And I had no idea what that was, but I knew it wasn't what my current circumstance was. I resigned And 3 weeks after that, I went to Martinique for the very first time out of the country. Also, it was solo, and having that time by myself to really reconnect with what I wanted, who I was overall, but also what my wants are, what my needs are, and really getting a chance to spend some time with me and to get to know me again was why I went on that trip. And I chose Martinique because it's a Francophone country and I grew up speaking French, and I'm like, okay, now I can go like brush up on those skills. So that's what I was looking for when I, decided to embark by myself. And I met agriculture when I got there, but was not planning on it.
Wow. Yeah. So it was a surprise that changed your life.
Indeed.
And so you got engaged with people in Martinique, actually got to put your hands in the dirt.
Yeah. And that was something so new for me. I never touched soil, never put my hands in dirt. And I was a Girl Scout. So the closest to outdoor things that I was doing was playing sports, which is something I enjoyed. And then camping. I definitely enjoyed that, but I didn't have to like touch dirt to really camp. And just because you go outside and camp doesn't mean you like bugs. And so that's definitely wasn't my thing either. Like if I see a spider or if like a bee is too close, like all of that. So, having that experience in Martinique, getting a chance to just, meet people and see how they integrated agriculture into their lives so seamlessly. That's just the way that they lived. And I connected with it. And so on so many different levels, and in my interactions were with people of color while I was there. One was a Thai chef who made me cups of tea each morning, and and that was with herbs that were fresh from his garden. So I got a chance to see that. And then the other was a group of Black farmers, a family of Black farmers, that I got a chance to see them in their element. And so yeah, it really was enriching. It really enriching and changed my life completely.
And it sounds like it really changed your relationship to food.
Very much so. Because, working in healthcare, you would think people have this idea that people in healthcare are like so health conscious. It's like absolutely the opposite on so many levels. Like, of course, there are people that are, but it's just, you get caught up in the rat race that is healthcare, the big business that is healthcare, that you forget about a lot of the minute details, which also is what led to my burnout, right? Like, I was so focused on my career and making sure that I was doing a good job and, spending hours not eating, not resting, not getting enough sleep, like all of that, not taking any time for me. And so, being health conscious now in a much different way than I had been before.
So you were just about 30. I mean, this is a big life change and pretty early on. And so you came back to Philly, and then how did this organic empire that you're putting together, how did that emerge?
Well, after having the interaction with the Thai chef and him making me cups of tea and me like, oh, this is beautiful. And I want this. Like, what is tea like in Philadelphia? What is tea like in America? And I wanted to learn more about that. And then also having an experience, at a different part of the island with these Black farmers, and how I got a chance to help them pack boxes for their CSA members. And I watched their members come pick it up. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful moments I got a chance to witness. And I wanted to see what that was in Philadelphia. So the first thing I did when I come home is do some research, figure out what tea is like here, but also like what farms are close in my area. Is there anyone that can teach me how to grow? Because I also knew that I wanted to grow the herbs myself for the tea. So I knew that it was going to be two separate companies, but all be a collective mission about reintroducing farming into the lifestyles of urban people. That's the overarching theme of my corporation and what we focus on. It's like, how many ways can we show people that agriculture shows up in everything that you do and everything that you have interest in? So that's what I did. I did the research.
I just want to stop you for a second there.
Sure.
Because I want to put a pin in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want people to just hear it and let it go by. Agriculture shows up in everything we do and every way we be. Like that's this is something to be looking at that I don't think most people realize.
True. Yeah, very much so.
And so the foundation, you're talking about the generation and how all of this evolved, but I know that a big part of what you do is education. And I don't want to skip over the genesis of all of this, but I do want to point out that the education factor is a big part of it. And I do have a lot of questions because you have some pretty heavy duty entrepreneurial chops. You know, to be putting all this together, to be pulling these pieces from all different areas and to be building a business and to be making it viable over the pandemic, yet having experienced all kinds of crises and challenges along the way. So let's back up to hear more of the genesis story. You came back to Philly, you've started doing your research, which was getting the education. So that's kind of bringing us back around full circle. Go for it.
Yeah, so the goal was to try to find a farm where I could intern, right? I wanted to give my time. And mind you, I did just resign from my job. So, and I have a life that needs to still be supported and people that I need to support. So I did Uber and Lyft from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then I did groceries. I delivered groceries from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then in the middle of the day, that was my time to tinker and figure out my master plans every day, Monday through Friday. And then on weekends, I would just do the pretty much Ubering all day and delivering groceries all day. And that was enough to really supplement what I needed and supplement the savings that I had, my expenses, so that I could really massage this plan for entrepreneurship. And I never thought I would be an entrepreneur either. So, you know, I just knew that I needed to bring in revenue, but I wanted to do it with farming and with agriculture and figure out how that was a sustainable business here in an urban community where there's land is thought to be scarce, but really isn't, right? So I had to dig into that and research. And I found a couple farms that allowed me to come volunteer, but it was more like one-offs. It wasn't like anyone that was looking for an intern that knew nothing, right? So that was difficult, really trying to find someone who I could, you know, be mentored by. And I had not found that person. So I literally just dug in and started to do my own research, go places, visit people's farms just to see how business as usual is for them. You know, luckily there are some farms in the northwest section of the city that I could at least go browse at and see. And so that was helpful. That was really helpful. But then I was like, all right, you just got to get started. And how do you do that? I don't know. But one of my very good friends, you know, knew that I was really interested in growing. And for Mother's Day that year in 2018, bought me a 4x6 foot greenhouse. And so that's really what started it, is that I had this space, you know, coming right into the spring, which was great. Cause then this is the winter when I'm like thinking about how I'm going to do everything. How do you grow? And then, my greenhouse showed up and I set it up and I started growing herbs first. And that was to support the tea company. And then the herbs grew, started doing some test blending and learning about herbalism and how, you know, herbs and the potency and what part of the plant is edible, all of this, so that I could create these tea blends. And I did. Yeah, I started these tea blends and honey and started to sell it to make some money.
So where did you sell it? First of all, the fire in your belly to be doing what you did so passionately, it's kind of mind-blowing. Like you were just on a mission, seriously, to be turning your life into this directed focus. Remarkable, really. Thank truly you. Yeah. So like when something calls to you, right? You answer the call.
Yeah, I think that's why I always tell the story that agriculture found me, because I wasn't looking for it. You know, I don't even think I was looking for anything. I just was like, I need a break. If anything, I was looking for myself. And I think that when agriculture came, I was looking at a mirror and I didn't even know it.
Wow.
So that's the beautiful part of this whole journey that I've had, you know, always knowing that I love science, always knowing that I love healthcare, and I like helping, I like being of service to people. And so I get to do all three of those things in a company that I get to build, that I have built and will continue to grow and scale. So yeah, never would have thought.
No, it's really, really remarkable. So where did you sell your teas? Where did you package them, or did you like package them in boxes, or did you do the farmers market route? How did you go?
Yeah, so I actually, before I did a lot of R&D, we call, you know, research and development, figuring out flavors, invited close friends over to do tastings with me, which was really nice, like in my house. And then I decided that I wanted to have a sweetener line. So I started out doing syrups. Like I was like cooking syrup and I'm like, all right. And they came out amazing, but they were hard to they were different because like the shelf life would be, you could do it that the shelf life would be extended, but you had to do with heat. It was like all these other steps. And I'm like, okay, now this is too much. I did it for like a year and I was like, no. But honey was also a part of the first product line that I put out with the tea. And I was like, this is it. I found some local honey in the area, a farmer also very close to me and in Germantown section of the city. And he had enough honey to be able to support what I needed. And I'm like, I need gallons of honey. He was like, oh yeah, I got you. So I was able to play around with flavors. Like, you know, I tried a lemongrass honey. I've done orange zest. We have lavender, mint honey, like the list goes on. And it just was me figuring out how to infuse honey and use it that could be amazing with some different tea blends that I was coming up with. And the very first time I exposed it outside of my doors was at the corner of my block. There was a community garden there. And I asked the leader of that garden if it was okay for me to set up a tea tasting for the community. Completely free. And I put out little flyers saying that a tea tasting was happening. And then I just had neighbors like that were people I didn't even meet before too, that were coming to taste my tea. And I had these little cards that asked for their opinion. They were opinion cards. I wanted to know, like, what did you think? Which tea was your favorite? What about it that did you like? What didn't you like? Like all of this. And everybody, I didn't get nobody said anything bad. I don't know if they were just trying to be nice or because these are strangers. So they could have been honest with me. I mean, some people I knew as well. My family was there. But you know, when I think about this right now, it's because I don't get to think about these things. Like that was a start, you know, that was my first time opening up to the community for people to taste. And everybody was like, this is so great. This is amazing. And I'm like, oh, wow, like this is fun. Okay, what's the next thing I can do? And I started to learn about vending. And you know how a lot of entrepreneurs that have products start is that you look to see where you can go to an open market to go sell your items, whether that be farmers markets or different dedicated vending events to support small businesses. And so I was just booking myself for, you know, whatever I could find, inquiring about space and all of that. And my very first vending opportunity was in September of 2019 down at the old Bach High School, which is now, you know, Bach Bar and all the small businesses in there. And they had a block party that they lined the streets with just a ton of vendors. And I got to be one of those. And the dope thing is that I remember that I said I would do an activity too. I was like, oh, I'll do a kids activity. And I had kids planting seeds. I had a big bucket of soil on the table and I had like kids walking up just to plant seeds in little egg cartons that they can take home. And I'd say to them, like, make sure you water this when you get home. And yeah, that was really cool. I'm just, it's fun because I don't even like think about these things. And on the table, what I would do was I would have the opportunity to have a tasting with the parents of the honey and like have them smell the teas. And I had one of my good friends with me, Darlene, who would be, you know, hanging out and showing the kids like how to do the things while I was talking to the parents. And that was good. It was like great. And we sold so much tea that day. We sold so much honey. It was just an amazing experience. And I was like, I can do this. Like, this is great. This is working. And the real true blessing of that day was my very first time being out and vending and selling my wares. That was the same day that I met the senior buyer for one of the top specialty grocery stores in our region, who came over to me. And I'll never forget, every time I tell this story, I do say it this way, that he came over to me with his baby strapped to his chest, with his flip-flops and his rainbow flip-flops, and just like his chino shorts, like you hanging out in South Philly on a weekend. And he comes over to me and he picks up my product and he says, "This is amazing." And I say, "Thank you so much. I don't know who this is. He's a customer." I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much. Like, I truly appreciate that." And his mom comes over. They're looking at the Tulsi basil specifically. That's the one he's talking about. And he was like, "This is so good." Like, and then he goes on to say, "Have you ever thought about UPCs?" And I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Like, what is that? And he just goes on to say, like, "Yeah, like, I'm the senior buyer for DeBruno Brothers. It would be great if you came into the office to do a full tasting." And, one conversation led to the other, led to another.
Wait. What are UPCs?
Yeah, so UPCs are the barcodes that are on the sides of products when you purchase them.
Okay.
And right, so exactly, right. So what is that? And there's this whole process behind it in food and marketing and all of that. So it helps it helps you and whoever's selling your products be able to keep track of what they sold. And so, in that conversation with him, I still wasn't exactly sure what we were talking about, but I knew that he said he was a senior buyer for DeBruno Brothers. And in that moment, my brain was so like glazed over that I didn't even connect who DeBruno Brothers was until after he walked away from me and left me with his card.
Since most of the people listening are not from Philly, you got to tell them who DeBruno Brothers is.
Yeah, DeBruno Brothers is, I would say, the top specialty market in the Philadelphia region. They're on the main line as well, but they house the best and the freshest foods and ingredients in our region. They love to source directly from farmers, really high quality, amazing food, that they care about who the sources are, and they care about flavor. And they're a major into cheese. Like, cheese is definitely
That's how I know them.
Yeah, it might be their top category, honestly. I think it is, because they're known as the main cheesemongers of our area. So, anytime you want a charcuterie board, they're definitely the people you go to for that. And but that wasn't connecting. All those details weren't connecting for me in the moment of speaking with him. So luckily he left me with his card. And after he walked away, I did the research real quick on my phone, and I was like, "Oh my goodness."
I was just discovered.
I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening to me." And we set up the meeting. I go in to meet with him and the head of his category, the honey category. And that was the first thing we talked about, was honey. And then COVID happened and a bunch of different series of events, but finally we were launched in all 5 of their stores. And this is still my top, receiver of my goods. And all because I was at my very first vending event.
So one of the things that new entrepreneurs are challenged by pretty traditionally is scaling.
Yes.
And so to go from nothing, essentially, to fulfilling 5 stores, did you have issues around meeting demand?
It definitely was difficult, but it was a lot of all-nighters. I'm gonna tell you that. It was definitely, just putting the hours in and burning midnight oil. I was kicked into high gear because their very first order was 500 jars of honey.
Oh my heavens.
Yeah. That's what the first one was. And I was like, okay, like we can do this. And the thing is, the entrepreneur, because I said I never never thought about being an entrepreneur, but the spirit of it was just in me, because
clearly
I knew. I was like, when they said like, "Oh yeah, can you do 500?" And I'm like, absolutely. Yes, we will. And then it's like, Christa, what did you just agree to? But you're going to figure it out. And I did, right? And I had one other person that helped me And we were literally all night long for a few different nights, just making sure we were getting it right. Cause that was the other thing. It's like, it's one thing to produce, 20 jars of honey, 30 jars of honey to take to market and sell for the day. It's a whole nother thing to be able to mass produce and make sure the quality of each one is consistent.
Right.
So this was taking me into a whole different realm. And that's what we talk about, what you just said, scaling financially is difficult, but also scaling for quality can also be very difficult. And so I finally found that sweet spot to make sure.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. To make sure we can get that right every time. So yeah, learning curves.
Big time, but very condensed learning curves, it sounds like.
For sure.
So I actually learned about you through FarmerJawn. I don't know how I stumbled on it. And then I discovered that it was literally in my backyard. And how did FarmerJawn grow out of the tea and honey company?
So yeah, interesting to hear you put it that way, because technically they're definitely two different companies. However, most people think FarmerJawn is first because it's the most, syndicated. But Viva Leaf really got us started because we were featured in our very first Enquirer article in March of 2020. And that's when
for people who don't know, the Philadelphia Inquirer is a tradition. It's I don't know, 100 years old or something.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
So it's like, one of the main papers in the city. And we had an article in there about our products, and, they came and they took photos. It was like a photo shoot. It was pretty amazing for them to think that of me. This is what I mean, like blessing.
How did they hear about you? Was it because of DeBruno Brothers? I would imagine.
No, because our products were not in DeBruno Brothers yet because COVID happened.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was a delay. Yeah, there was a delay in the products actually getting into the store, because this was March of 2020. I had just talked to DeBruno Brothers in September. We had our first meeting towards the middle to end of September. October, we continue to do little tastings, negotiations, all that stuff. And so now we're into 2020. When we're getting ready for me to schedule my demo days in the store, to interact with customers, and March and COVID hits.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they're like, we have to delay, and everybody's stretched for coin, all that stuff is happening. And so we didn't actually get into DeBruno Brothers to the end of 2020.
Wow.
Finally launched us in the end of 2020. So in March of 2020, when my Philadelphia Inquirer article came out, a real estate developer that owned 40,000 square feet of just greenhouses on a 1 acre property in Elkins Park reached out to me, Elkins Park right outside of Philadelphia, reached out to me and says like, hey, I read about what you're doing. I'd love for you to come see this property that I have. And mind you, I'm currently growing I had just went from my 24 square foot greenhouse to a 3,000 square foot space in Roxborough, another part of the city. So I did just scale a little bit for the growing space. But I'm growing herbs at this point. And then I had just started to develop this concept of the CSA, like growing food. And
for folks who don't know what a CSA is.
Of course. A CSA is a community supported agriculture approach to sustaining farmers and helping farmers have a successful season with all the revenue they need to be able to produce food for people. So the exchange is a CSA member or a member of the community will sign up to give money to these farmers, and that farmer will then take that money and run their season. And what they get after that is that when all the food is grown, every single week you come to the farm to pick up your food that you paid for, essentially, because you help support that local farmer. And I love this concept. I just love it. And that's what I saw when I was in Martinique, not knowing what I was looking at, but that's what that was. Yeah, so take me back to where we were, Mira, after the CSA.
The 4,000 square foot greenhouses.
Yeah. So 3,000 square feet in Roxborough is what I was growing on. I had just launched my 10 family CSA in the space out there as well. So I was growing for 10 families, and I was producing herbs and making tea blends, because we were still vending. I was still selling at different markets on the weekends and so forth. And I then go see these beautiful greenhouses that hadn't been used in about 1 to 2 years. They were in production for flowers for about 100 years. Old greenhouses, really nice and beautiful. You know, like older things definitely are just made better. And so just to see like full glass greenhouses, some of them wooden, you know, just amazing architecture. And I said, no, thank you. Yes. That was the first thing I said when I saw
it was 4,000 square feet, is that right?
40,000 square feet.
40,000. Oh my heavens. Okay.
40,000, between 8 greenhouses, so all different sizes.
So you went from 24 square feet to 3,000, and here's 40,000.
Here's 40,000 square feet of greenhouses on one property. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to start in this one. This is a 4,500 square foot greenhouse. There is a 1,200 square foot greenhouse in the front. And then there's a 5,000 square foot greenhouse. That's my goal house for the next year. I'm like, this house could grow so much food annually. Like, I want that. We'll think about that for next year. But the one I was in was the 4,500 square foot greenhouse, producing so much food, you know, doing all the things, getting acclimated to greenhouse growing on a whim, because nobody taught me how to do this. This is completely different than growing outside. So I'm just like, okay. But before I even get to that point, I said no. Yeah, I said no to him. I was like, this is a great opportunity. I'm thankful that you think I can do this, but no, thank you. And a month goes by, and I'm still doing my thing, CSA, all, you know, tea company. And he reaches out to me again, and he's like, you know, I know you said no, but I really think this is a really good opportunity. I'm reaching back out to you because I'd like you to come take a second look and let's have a chat. So I go take the second look, and that second time, I'm like, I'm convinced. And I'm like, okay, let's just do it. Like, what do you have to lose, Christa? Which ended up being a lot, but but you know, I was in that
for what you ask.
Yeah, exactly. But the other beautiful thing about experiences, you know, good and bad, every time something goes wrong, I still feel resilient. Even in the sorrow, there's still some resilience that has to happen, because I don't know how to accept defeat overall. Yeah, and that's also
it's a gift.
It's a great quality for a farmer as well. Because, you know, there's just nothing but, you know, setbacks and letdowns as a farmer, but there's an art of resiliency that you just gain in this work, which I didn't know before. So, you know, I get to learn a lot about who I am and myself along the way of this journey. But yeah, I was in that greenhouse those greenhouses for a year. And the real amazing thing about being there is that that's where people learned about us. From there, we had so many articles, you know, we were in all types of news reports and ongoing and articles and magazines. And so that was the beauty of that property. And then a year later, in April 2021, we lost all of our crops in that winter because the heaters, as beautiful as these greenhouses are, because they still exist, the heaters did not work. And that was something that I was battling, you know, with the owner of the property to get remedied, and it just never did. And I was really heartbroken leaving that property. And I made a decision in April after the winter had ended, and we lost so much money, and we didn't grow anything. And I was like, okay, I think the best thing for me to do now is to leave here completely. Although, and I had to be convinced of that as well. My team, I was talking to them. I'm like, this is where FarmerJawn became FarmerJawn. Like, you know, I started the company before I even got here, but this is how everybody knew who we were. And I'm like, I really want to try to make it work here. And one of my amazing team members came to me and they said, the FarmerJawn is not this place. FarmerJawn is you. Wherever you go, that is where the vision goes. And then that's when I came to terms with we were leaving that property and I was going to move on to the next thing. Yeah.
And so I want to hear where it came to so that people understand where you are now.
Yes.
But you kind of skipped over the developing a CSA thing. You started with the tea company, and the jump to a CSA is a big deal. And I think that CSAs are so much part of our future in localizing food supply and connecting people to the production of their food locally. So I'd love you to jump into that a little bit.
Yeah. So developing a CSA, the concept of it is making sure people understand where their food is coming from. So people that join a CSA are typically people that are just already in the know. But because I am from an urban community, I consider myself pretty well educated, and I had no idea what a CSA was. That gave me the understanding that my demographic is not who CSAs are marketed to. And so being from an urban community, living in an urban community and living in an underserved and marginalized community as well, where the median income is definitely below, much of it is below the poverty line. It was important for me to be able to be a representation. Representation matters. And for me to be able to tell people that look like me that this is also for you. You just don't know about it yet, but I'm here to tell you about it. They're the good news of agriculture, the good news of knowing where your food comes from. And I started to do some marketing, started to really ramp up my Instagram and Facebook and all of that. And literally when I opened up this opportunity for 10 families, it went so quickly. And we had members that were close to, like, in the city, like close to me and where I was growing and where I lived. But I had a member that lived about 40 minutes away in a part of the area called Clifton Heights, a full hour away. And she was a Black woman that just wanted to support me. And she drove 40 minutes to come get food from me every single week. Wow. And I thought I was like, there's so much power that I don't even know what I'm doing yet, right? I don't even know what I'm doing yet. And this is, the kind of reception that I'm getting. And I'm like, I only have room for 10 families. It's because I also was trying to dip my toe into it. Like I don't know what to expect. So I didn't want to rush in. And so getting to grow food for people's households, kale, peas, beets was a huge thing that I wanted to bring even to just my community. And that's why it's the logo for FarmerJawn. I designed that logo that way because I could not find beets in my own community, but I do enjoy beets. But they're not here. In our corner stores, you definitely can't find them. And in the grocery stores that are in these communities, you cannot find beets. And it's because they're just not something that culturally we grew up with. And so they don't sell. So I understand.
Well, also, it's not a bad thing because most beets are GMO. So you're doing organic growing too.
We do. Everything we do is organic. And that part was important to me. Again, going back to the health of our physical bodies, but also the health of our environment. All the things that are pumped into chemicals and additives that are unnecessary in growing our current food. And then add on top of it that it comes from at least 1,500 miles away. Most of the food you get in the supermarket, we can do so much better, like you said, with creating local foodways where the people are living.
And in the underserved communities, particularly getting fresh produce, it's at all.
Yeah.
Is a challenge, right?
Very much so.
Let alone quality produce.
Exactly. Right? And then the other thing too, is the produce that is available, it may not be quality, but people are very cautious with their dollars. You have to be when, underserved communities we definitely are lower income. And so it's difficult when you have fresh collard greens or a can of collard greens. The can of collard greens is always going to be cheaper and it's going to be big enough to feed your whole family. Spinach too. You think about a can of spinach. It's I know this can of spinach is going to feed everybody. This bunch of spinach is going to dwindle down to nothing. You know what I mean? So yes. It's that kind of thing when we're trying to address it and educate people on how to create a full meal using what we're providing to them in these CSA boxes. So that's why we also provide recipes.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
So a question with the CSA model, it's almost like people are buying shares of the farm in a way, right? And
Indeed.
so they're prepaying. If the farm has a bad season, they lose the money. If the farm has a really abundant season, they get lots and lots of produce and whatever's in between. How did you figure out how to price this for the families that, I mean, like, again, you're marrying agriculture, cultural awareness, food awareness, and entrepreneurship. How did you price it?
Yeah, so our CSA share is $400.
How
Ever
did
since
you
I
come
set
up
that,
with the price?
yeah, so ever since I set that price, I left it there, and it's based on 8 to 10 items that folks are receiving. And I break it up between those things and thinking about like, oh, this is going to be able to feed at least this many people. So we focus on between 2 to 4 people households, which is mostly the average, and saying like, okay, we're going to make sure that there's enough in here for you to feel like you got your money's worth over this full 12-week period. We also, in addition to that, we add an additional 2 weeks because for people that may have missed pickups or went on vacation or what have you, we add an additional 2 weeks that are just essentially free. We just add them on. So people can still, it's about creating an experience and creating value. And that's important to me as a consumer myself. That's the things that matter. And then on top of that, we also use a portion of their share dollars to support other local small businesses. So every other week, there's a small business item that's included in the CSA. And so this week, we actually did maple syrup from a local company here in Philadelphia he actually tap maple trees in the winter.
You know what? Who is that?
Jethro Heiko.
I think he's tapping trees literally directly across the street.
Probably. Yeah, because we did. We tapped 10 trees. He taught me how to tap trees. He taught my interns how to tap trees this winter, and he tapped 10 trees from our farm. And so out of him tapping 110 trees, this is his first season, like really doing a production. He tapped 110 trees. And so I love saying like 10 of those trees were from our farm because the syrup that you're getting literally is a piece of Elkin's estate, which is literally a piece of FarmerJawn, which I love. And so that was the first CSA. Is we did 4 ounces of maple syrup for all of our CSA members. Wow. And it's just a connection. It's like, we need to create local food, local meat, local veggies, local everything, textiles, like the list goes on. And we support whoever is aligning with our mission. We support them by buying something from them to give to all of our members. Wow. So the pricing of it, is definitely needed so that we can make sure we're covering the cost of production of the food. And I can pay my staff fairly. I don't pay anyone in my organization under $15 an hour, and I never have. And so, and that has not always been easy, to be quite honest. But it was important to me because I'm like, if I'm asking for your time, I need to at least give you a living wage, which is 15 is even still difficult, but like I need to start somewhere. And that's why we price the CSA that way. But one thing that is key with having access to CSA, especially for people that look like me or just in general have a lower income and think that, paying $400 just a whim like that may be difficult, but those people should still have access to the experience if they would like to. And so we do a deposit and pay by the week model as well. Wow. Whereas, you'll pay $100 into it in the beginning, and then each week you just pay $25 every time you come pick up. And that's a lot more, that's easier for a lot of people. And when I was thinking about like how I worked 40 hours a week and putting food on my table was still difficult, this was what I felt like would have worked well for me. And so that's what we did, what I developed for the community.
Were you able to cover your expenses with the 10 families?
Oh, with the 10 families, I wasn't covering my expenses in whole. No, definitely with between the tea company and the 10 families, that's where it was. Cause I didn't have much overhead because my community, I was growing for them in a community garden. So I wasn't like paying rent. It was more like I had 3,000 square feet of space in this community garden that was dedicated to my operation. And you pay for that one time of year and then you're done. So that was the benefit of that before I scaled it up to, farming in different areas where I paid, something monthly.
So where we left off was you left the 40,000 square foot greenhouses.
Mm-hmm.
You wandered in the desert for a little bit, and then you found your way back to Elkins Park.
Yeah. So actually, when I left those greenhouses in Elkins Park, I just pivoted. I was like, okay, I'm licking my wounds. That was a traumatic experience, but the marathon continues. There's still work that I need to do. And one big thing for me was this corner store concept that we have all throughout marginalized and underserved communities, where they're filled with sugary and salty snacks, fried sandwiches, fried food, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is really what's killing my community. This is what's killing Black and brown communities all over this nation, is the not having access. And this is actually what's convenient. The unhealthy stuff is what's convenient and what costs the least. And I wanted to revamp the corner store. And so I started to work on this concept called redefining the corner store. And I was just talking about it. It literally was just this idea that I had. I didn't know exactly how I was going to execute it, but I knew that it required me finding some land and having a proof of concept for one store, and then help replicating them around the city. Like, that was the goal. And, I talked about it a lot when I spoke with people on podcasts, and one person heard the podcast and was like, I have land for you. I was like, you have land? Let me come see. And it's actually right in Germantown. And so when I looked at it and I saw it, I was like, I see my vision coming to life right here. I see this being accessible to the community, but it's right in the community where I grew up. Like, this is what I want. And yeah, so like we have that location, and I wrote a grant to support that work, and to the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and we won a $50,000 grant. Wow. To make that come to life. So that project is coming towards the end of this year, and will be live and ready to go by spring of next year. So yeah, that's what I was thinking about when I left Elkins Park the first time, what my team was thinking about. I had a couple of dedicated people who are amazing, who they were thinking about, how we're going to get a bigger farm again. Like, they never stopped thinking about that, but we weren't having those conversations. It was literally them plotting on their own. And one day, so I left that farm on April 30th of 2021. And one day in June, I get a text message saying like, hey, can you meet us at such and such spot at such and such time? And I was like, sure, no problem. So I met with them, and they were like, okay, I'm going to ride with you. It was very all like plotted out. And it was like, okay, like, I don't want you to look. So like, close your eyes and all that stuff. And I'm like, where are we going? They're like, pull up to the post office and we're going to drive you over. And so I did the things. I followed directions. We went and we pull up to this place, and then I get to open my eyes, and they're like, look at this. Isn't this great? And I'm like, it's just like a bunch of open space. I saw a greenhouse, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, what are we thinking? And they're like, what if this is the new home of FarmerJawn? And we're in Elkins Park again, the place essentially that I have some trauma from. So I'm just like, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'm like, this land is on a 42-acre estate. It's absolutely beautiful. These greenhouses are here. The story of the property is, great. The historical history of the property is amazing. So it's just like, but I'm like, no, because I'm like, I can't fathom the idea of having something, putting your heart and soul into something, and then at any point, somebody being able to snatch that away from you because they didn't do what they said they were going to do, or what the paper said they should do. You know what I mean? And so I just was like, I can't do this unless we have an opportunity to own it. And being as though I can't afford all these acres, this is not the space. And they were just like, okay, I really want you to reconsider. Let's like think about it more. And they kept bringing me more details and like more what ifs and more, just thinking about what the real possibilities are. And I still was not completely convinced. I called like a FarmerJawn town hall, if you will, to kind of get the ears of the people that were my past CSA members and just members of the community. Because by the time I was in those greenhouses, I had 50 CSA members at that time. I had scaled from 10 to 50 now over that year of being in those greenhouses. And so being as though I was a part of that community and the community was a part of me at that time, I was like, if I'm going back to the same community, even though it's like Abington and Cheltenham, two different townships, now I'm going to Cheltenham side of Elkins Park, but the same people are going to come patronize. So I want to listen to them. I want to see like what they think. And so I held this Zoom call on a whim. It was literally like, and in one day I was like, hey, on my Instagram, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do a Zoom. I need to talk to y'all about something. Like, so if you're available around 7:00, please hop in the call. And I got on, and then that evening we did the call, and I had like 30 people hop on the call, government officials, people that were in my CSA, just regular friends, and just people from the community that hopped in, and one person that wasn't even from the area that just saw it on my Instagram. And hopped in the call. And I just was like, I want to be very honest and transparent with you. There is an opportunity for me to be at, to get 5 acres of land and greenhouses and all this amazing stuff at this property, which is well known in that community. And I said, I'm very nervous. I'm treading lightly. I'm cautious. A lot of money was lost. A lot of time was spent as well. And I just want to make sure that this is a good move for me. And everyone on that call, the consensus was that if you do this, we got you. And I did the thing. And I was like, we're going to do the thing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so that was in June of 2021.
That was June of 2021. Yeah. So only 3 months after we lost our larger farm, we had an opportunity for a new larger farm.
So you've been there now for a year.
Yeah, so I actually got on the property last June in 2021, and I have officially been on there since the end of last year. Okay. Yeah, so it's been really, really great since at least October of last year is when it was official.
So the one thing we haven't spoken about yet, and I could speak to you for hours because there's such a richness of your story, but we haven't spoken about the educational piece.
Yes. So when, looking at all the space, like right outside the city, 1 minute outside of Philadelphia is where our farm is, you can literally walk. And so and also 15 minutes from where I grew up, which is even a bigger statement, just thinking about like where the community that I come from, in 15 minutes, I could be at a farm that I'm developing to even more empower and better my community. So there's a lot of power there for me. And when I got this 5 acres of land, there's 2 greenhouses that are old and beat up and need a lot of help and work. And I'm just like, all right, let's just dig in. The community's excited. I'm holding volunteer days and events and really just thinking about plans to raise revenue. But I'm also like, yes, the CSA can happen here, but there is something missing. Like there's no outlets for how to grow, how to be a farmer. Like, where does one learn how to do that? And I recall my own experience of like coming home after leaving Martinique and knowing that I wanted to grow and having nowhere to go to really get the fundamentals of that. And then I pair that experience with the fact that in the early 1900s, there were 1 million Black-owned farms in our nation.
Wow. And
then looking at today, there's only 45,000 farms that are still Black owned. And then when you're talking about land, actual land ownership, it goes down to 33,000. So, that's a big statement. Yes, I am a Black owned farm. However, I don't own any land. So I'm really a part of that 33,000 of the nation, which is about 2% of farmers nationwide. So farmers, it just doesn't look like me. And there's a lot of trauma when it comes to soil and growing food and the outdoors. And these are all colonized spaces that we're working to decolonize and destigmatize for Black and brown people. But at the same time, create a space that is open and comfortable for all people, regardless of your socioeconomic status, whether you are Black, white, brown, whatever. All those things matter when we're talking about true social health, which is that third pillar of my company. Social, there's environmental, and there's physical. Those are the things I build my company on and really try to hold true to when I'm making decisions. Like, does it impact all three of these in a healthful way? So I started a nonprofit because I'm like, you have all this land now, you have a infrastructure, you have houses like on this property, you can do so much for so many people, and you also can't do it all, always and forever. So you need to teach people how to do this because that's what you needed when you wanted to be a farmer. So I launched this program called FarmerJawn and Friends. It's our nonprofit, it's 501c3, and it's a cohort of 10 Black and brown individuals that we chose through a application process. And I put out that application, and within 10 days, we had 50 applications. And so we had to cut it off. And myself and my COO, Brandon, him and I really dug in, and like between reading through the applications and then also doing the interview calls, we narrowed it down to 10 people that we welcomed onto our farm to give them the experience and the knowledge of knowing how to start a farm and to know how to operate a farm from scratch.
Wow.
In the process of us also starting this farm from scratch. So they got a fresh piece of land that was covered in lawn grass and sod. And we basically taught them all the fundamentals of how to take this 4,000 square foot piece, which we gave them, and say, like, this is your space. But that's only one part. Knowing how to grow food and knowing how to farm is only one side of being a farm. You also have to know how to run a business. And so a part of this cohort is that we give them all the skills, knowledge, tools to do the actual farming itself. But also I tap in with each of them one-on-one to say, what is it that you want to do with your life? At this point, what is it that you love? What are you passionate about? Why do you want to farm? And let me help you integrate that into whatever your mainstream interest is, so that we can truly make urban agriculture prolific, profitable, and sustainable in urban communities, not only in Philadelphia, but nationwide. So this is our very first cohort that I'm super proud of. Everybody's from the Philadelphia region. So I would say like the tri-state, Philly, we have some people from Delaware. And the next one that we're planning is to be able to open out a little bit more, expand that radius to be able to get people that may live a little further. So we're really working on getting fully funded, writing grants, letting people know what our story is, so that this property, I have a major, large, beautiful house on the property that has 31 rooms in it, and it needs a lot of work. However, I see that building as being an urban agriculture school almost, in the sense of, we can actually house our interns. And that's what my true goal is, to really impact urban ag, because we can get people nationwide that come stay with us for a full season. And then we send them back out to wherever they came from in the world to do urban ag that they learn from us. And that's really, culminating this mission and bringing it to a head.
What are the ages of these interns?
Yeah, so they're all, honestly, all different ages. We have people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. We have people that are single. We have people with kids. We have one woman who's homeschooling. We have another woman who's a doula. We have herbalists. The list really goes on. And I just love to see the dedication of this group. There's one person that literally quit everything they were doing and started to clean on the side, just so that they can have open availability to do this cohort. Remarkable. And I'm just like, that is dedication.
It's kind of the passion that you exhibited when you got involved in this whole thing. Well, Christa, you are truly a visionary, and it is such a privilege and a pleasure to speak with you. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, do you have some suggestions for resources for folks that are on the mission to learn how to farm?
Yeah, honestly, it can be a little difficult, but I would say at large, for anywhere you live, tapping into YouTube is amazing resource for sure for people because you have to also learn what your zone is and what grows well in your own area. And there's people that literally do so well with being informative. And then the other thing that's huge is just to go do it. Just to go do it. Get yourself some seeds, figure out what you want to grow, and if you live in a concrete jungle like I do, get yourself some pots. If you have the means to invest in a greenhouse, do that, because that's amazing to help extend your season through the summer. Through the winter. I say just do it, because that's literally how I got to where I am today, not having much know-how or skill, but just the willingness and the passion to do. So yeah.
So how can people find you?
Yeah, so please visit our Instagram. It's FarmerJawn Philly, and our
spell it.
Yeah, so Farmer, Farmer, and Jawn is JAWN, that Philly word, and Philly on the end. FarmerJawn Philly, and our website is in the process of being redesigned right in the moment, but really excited for y'all to see what that looks like when that's finished. And Facebook is also, we're on Facebook as well as FarmerJawn.
And what's the URL for your website? Even though it's not done yet.
Yeah, it's up, but it is just not much going on it. But FarmerJawnPhilly.com.
Perfect.
Is our website. Yeah. This has been great, Mira, chatting with you, and I truly appreciate you and your time and your audience as well.
Well, it's been such a treat, and I really look forward to following up with you in the next year or beyond. And I wouldn't have any doubt at all if Philly is transformed into a farming mecca.
Yes,
due to your efforts. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you. And I'll see you on the farm one of these days, I hope.
Absolutely. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. I want to thank my partner in crime at Sustainability Now, Scott Billy, who's also our producer, and all of you who carry the torch and carry hope forward into action. So until next time, live your best life, love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now. Visit sustainabilitynow.global to find resources related to today's program. While you're there, pledge your support by making a contribution to help us shape a world that works. And remember to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.